Hey, and welcome back to New Horizons Designs on YouTube. This is a community-driven sewing channel where you will find all kinds of fun and valuable content to implement into your craft practice. I'm Kate, and today we're making an adorable and on-trend reusable gnome gift bag. What? This is a free pattern that we are releasing just for our lovely followers. So you can check out the description box at the end of this video to find out how to get this pattern for free. Before we get started, it'd be really great if you could take a second and hit that red subscribe button if you haven't already. It really helps YouTubers like us evolve and create more great content that our viewers are looking for. Now let's get started. So before you get cutting, I do just want to mention a few things that might help make things a little bit easier. For the triangle hat piece, I found since I was cutting mine out of plaid, it made things easier when I folded the hat in half lengthwise, and then I was able to line up the top of the hat and the bottom of the hat on the same vertical plane. I also found it helpful to mark the center of the beard, and you'll find out why we do that later on. Don't forget to make sure you mirror that front top piece. You definitely need to have a right side and a left side, so if your fabric has a prominent front and back, make sure that you're mirroring that pattern piece. And then the last one I was going to talk about is the back piece, which is also the lining piece, as well as the bottom front piece. Make sure you have those aligned on the fold, but the right side of the pattern on the fold, because there is that bottom little slant corner, so if you have it on the wrong side, your bag is going to end up pretty funny looking. Now, as far as fabric goes, you can pretty much use anything, and I highly recommend using up scraps. This is a fantastic scrap buster. You can even use scrap fabric for the filling if you don't want to use poly filler. The pattern does recommend using woven for everything except for the nose. I would say you can even use woven for the nose if that's the color that you have. I think it'd be really fun to do the hat piece in some other type of texture, or maybe even leather shoes, just to add a little bit more texture into the bag. The pattern also recommends using faux fur for the beard. If you don't have faux fur on hand, because not everyone does, you can use other things like Sherpa, Minky, fleece, or even an old sweater or blanket. You also need some ribbon. If you don't have ribbon for this project, you can just make some fabric ties. And if you are using scraps and your pieces aren't quite big enough, though, the back and lining piece is really the only large piece, so if you need to make a seam down the center, go ahead and do it. Nobody's gonna care, and all you have to remember for that is to add seam allowance when you're cutting your pieces out. I think this would be really cute as like a patchwork type of look too. Okay, so here's the pieces that I have. So for the gnome itself, I have the boots, we have the legs, we have the hat, the nose, and the beard. And I will just say, if you are using faux fur when you're cutting out the pattern, what I did to make it really easy and make the fur kind of hold its furriness is I just traced the pattern piece onto the back of the fur, and then I just took my scissors and snipped just the backing, not the actual fur pile itself, and that's what gave it that nice flowy edge, because we aren't going to be sewing that down, so we want to make sure that it looks nice and flowy and not just like a sharp cut. Okay, and then we have the front pieces, so the two top front pieces and then the bottom piece. I'm using this leftover or upcycled, I don't know, it was gifted to me, this wool suiting. I had made a muslin out of it, and then I upcycled that muslin into these pieces. So if you're curious, the front piece of a seamwork bow top will give you enough pieces for this bag. And then I have my main fabric back, as well as my lining pieces, and you'll want to make sure that you transfer any markings that you need to onto all your pieces. Alright, and then you also need some filling. I'm just using a handful of poly filler. Again, you could use scrap fabric shredded up, or even just little scraps of fabric. You're also going to need your ribbon, and I am recommending using a strong thread. I like to use fishing line, and you're going to see why right now. First thing we're going to do is make the little nose for our gnome. Now, the instructions will tell you to baste on a sewing machine and do this. You certainly can. I prefer to hand sew this or hand baste it, and so I can use a strong thread like a fishing line. I always break the threads when I'm making pom-poms and such, so I have learned to use fishing line, and even that, sometimes I break. So if you want to do like I did, just grab a hand sewing needle and your fishing line and just kind of stay about a ½ inch from the edge, make a circle around there, and then once you get to the end, you'll notice that it's kind of puckering up. You can go ahead and put a little bit of filler in there, not too much because we don't want it to be quite stuffed like a pom-pom. And then you can tie the ends, and we're gonna leave the seam allowance sticking out. So gather that all up, kind of like a little bag, and tie the thread around there, making it nice and secure. This is also how you make a pom-pom. So if you were going to be making a pom-pom, you would just stuff it right full and then tuck the seam allowance inside. Okay, now it's time to work on our little boots. So take your 2 mirrored pairs there, and you're gonna lay the 2 pieces right sides together and the other 2 pieces right sides together as well. And you're gonna stitch along that curve as well as that little short straight piece there. And you're stitching this at a 3/8 seam allowance. You can use pins or clips if you want to here. Just try and go slow around that curve to keep that nice seam allowance. All right, now you're gonna notch into that corner there and trim around the curve. I'm using pinking shears. You don't have to, it doesn't say to in the instructions. If you want it to turn out nicely or you're worried about that, you can use pinking shears or just do some little triangular notches around the curves. I also opted to press that straight seam open. Okay, now you're gonna grab your leg pieces, and you're gonna wanna keep in mind, if you're using a directional print, which is going to be the bottom that attaches to the shoe. So open up your shoe piece and lay it right sides together with the edge of your leg piece. These should match up. If not, that just means that you're cutting or else your seam allowances were a little bit off. Go ahead and stitch both of those down in place using a 3/8 seam allowance. Next, you're gonna press that seam allowance down towards the shoe or the boot and flip it over and then top stitch it. Now you're gonna fold your leg pieces in half lengthwise so that they all match up nice and symmetrically, and you're gonna stitch down that long side. You might wanna use pins or clips if you want to get that seam, where the boot meets the leg seam, nice and even. Now you're going to snip that bottom corner off, and I chose to press my seams open, and you might notice I snipped the one leg with my very sharp little snips. So let's just not worry about it. Okay, so once you have your legs done, you can go ahead and turn them right sides out and stuff them with any type of filler that you're using. I will caution, do not stuff them too full or the bag won't sit up nicely by itself. If this does happen to you, all you have to do when you're done is unpick a little portion of that back seam, and you can pull some stuffing out and then hand stitch it back up together once you're done. All right, now we're gonna work on the hat. So you're gonna transfer the seam allowance marking to the top of your hat piece, or just measure down 3/8 of an inch and put a mark there. You're going to take your triangular piece and line it up with one of the top front pieces and have them right sides together, and then stitch from the bottom to the top, stopping at that seam allowance mark. Repeat with the other side, and then you're gonna fold your 2 front pieces right sides together and stitch them down together using a 3/8 inch seam allowance, making sure you stop at that same seam allowance mark that we marked on the hat. Go ahead and press the 2 diagonal seam allowances down towards the hat, and I chose to press the top one open. And then you're gonna top stitch 1/8 of an inch away from that seam on the front of your hat. All right, now we're gonna attach the beard, and this is why I liked to find the center of it. So if you didn't do that ahead of time, just go ahead and fold your beard piece in half and make a little snip or a mark with chalk or something like that, and line it up to that center point of your bottom front piece. And we're gonna base that in place at 1/4 inch from the edge of the top. All right, now we're gonna stick the little nosy on top of that and base that down at 1/4 inch as well. This is a lot of fabric to go through. So what I did was I just pushed my nose up a little bit past, so I wasn't sewing over all of those gathers of fabric, and it didn't really make a difference in the end. So you can do that. I also recommend using your hand wheel to crank over the thick parts. Your machine might not like you very much during this portion. And the final step for the front of the bag is to attach the 2 pieces together. So you're going to lay down either your top or bottom piece and then lay the other piece down right sides together along that bearded edge. And we're gonna stitch this down at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Again, keeping in mind that nose is very bulky to go over, so use your hand wheel when you're going over that. And then I chose to press the seam allowance down because this helped the nose stick up a little better. You could flip the beard up and top stitch that seam down if you wanted the nose to really pop up, but I don't think it's really necessary. Now, before I reveal to you what this gnome looks like, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and the like button if you're enjoying this video. It helps us know to make more content just like this one. Okay, now we're going to attach the legs to the bottom of the bag. So what you're going to do here is it can be tricky. So lay it out the way you want to and then flip it directly up so that you're pinning it exactly where you want. It's nice to have them on a bit of a 45-degree angle, but it's also not necessary. If you wanted it straight out, that's fine. I chose to have mine pointing out left and right. You could also have yours sticking straight up. You're just gonna have to play around with it. Make sure you have your boots facing the front, so you want them right sides together. When in doubt, just pin it down and then flip it back over to kind of mock up how it would be when it's sewn, and then you'll have a better idea of what it's gonna look like. Baste this down at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. All right, next we're taking our back piece and making sure that it has the drawstring openings on it, laying it face down or right sides together with the front piece, and we're gonna stitch it down. Now remember, you're not going to stitch on those drawstring openings. You're gonna sew a little bit, back stitch again, and then hop over that opening and continue all the way around, and then do the same on the other side. You might find it handy to go from the top of the bag down to the bottom on one side and then do the same on the other side and then go and do the bottom. I was able to just do it all at once with no problem. You also want to make sure that your legs and your beard are flipped out of the way inside the bag. That would be a disastrous mistake. Remember, you want everything right sides together. Once you have that done, do not trim or clip any of the seam allowances or corners. Then you're gonna open it up and press the side seams flat on both long edges. All right, now it's time to sew the lining, and this is super easy. Just slap them right sides together and sew all the way around. You don't need to worry about that drawstring opening for the lining. And once again, you're going to press the side seams open, remembering not to clip or trim any of the seams or corners. Next is the fun part. We get to put it together. So you're going to turn your lining piece right side out, slip it inside the main bag so that everything is facing each other, right sides together, and sew around that top portion, leaving about a 3-inch gap so you can turn it all out when you're done. And that's just what you're gonna do next. Reach inside and pull everything out. Then you're gonna stuff the lining back down into the bag and press around that top edge, and then top stitch it about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. This is also gonna close up that opening that we left. Almost done, guys. The last step is to measure down to that drawstring opening, seeing what it is. I decided to go with about a 2.5 inch from the edge here, and I made a long mark all the way around both sides, and then the bottom of my drawstring opening was about 1 inch further down from that, so I made a second line all the way around. Top stitch both of those. The tricky part here is to make sure the lining is nice and smooth inside so you don't get any goofy wrinkles or catch the bottom of the lining back up in that stitching or something weird like that. And the final step is to take a safety pin or a bodkin and thread your ribbon through the drawstring opening. Now, you can do this however you want, but what is written in the instructions and what I really like to do is take you're going to have 2 pieces of drawstring, so whatever you have, cut it in half. Take one of those drawstrings on one side of the bag, thread it all the way through around in a circle so it comes out the same side that it went into, and that is done with that one. Then you're gonna take your other piece to the other side of the bag where the other drawstring opening is and repeat the process on that side. So now on one side you have the 2 tails from that ribbon, and on the other side you have the ribbon tails of the second ribbon. They are separate. So then when you pull on them, they cinch up really, really evenly and nice. So again, you just wanna make sure that you bypass the other opening when you're threading your ribbons. I also chose to tie my ribbons together on the sides just so they don't get lost inside. My ribbons are a little shorter, so if you're using long ribbons, this probably isn't necessary. And that is it! These are so adorable. I think I'm going to be making so many of these. The best part is that you can upcycle and they're reusable, so they're really great for the environment and gift giving, and I mean, they're kind of a gift in themselves, aren't they? They are super easy to whip up. I also have a little hack for you guys. If you are interested in making a family of these, or you can make littler ones or bigger ones, and all you have to do to do that is adjust the size on your PDF pattern. There is a video on PDF patterns that we will link right up here and down in the description box of this video. So I think it would be really cute if you made like a Santa and an elf and just a whole variety of these and just pop them around your house. They are really cute to use as decoration. It would be really cute to have hanging around your house or under your Christmas tree this year. Don't forget to check out the description box to grab this free PDF pattern. Thanks so much for hanging out with me here at New Horizons, and I'll see you next time. Bye!